Good evening, and welcome to the, is this on? Hello. No? Nope. There it goes. Well, I'll start over. Good evening and welcome to the March 28th, 2018 meeting of the Economic Development and Housing Commission. Tonight's agenda is available on the counter along the wall with request to speak cards. A reminder that everyone that requests to speak should be, the card should be completed and turned into the commission clerk. If you wish to speak to the commission regarding any item on tonight's agenda, please write the item number on your card. If you wish to speak on an item not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of this commission, please do so during the general administration section of tonight's agenda. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and televised, so smile, so that all speakers, in order to be recognized, must be called on by the chair and come forward to the microphone. Speaking in public may cause some individuals to be uncomfortable, so everyone is asked to be professional and respectful at all times. So, we have a full commission, almost. I think we do have a full commission. Very good. Congratulations, everybody. Let's start off by the Pledge Allegiance to the flag. And the Vice Chair. Oh, yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on now to General Administration Function, Part 1 of our agenda. And I understand we have a request to speak card from Michael Tovar.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am here on behalf of Shores of Hope, and this comment section is in regards to the CDBG funding. I was made aware minutes before this council started that the funding has been pushed back because it has not yet been released by the federal government. That being said, I would still like to advocate on behalf of Shores of Hope for our rapid rehousing program and that some of that money be allocated to fully fund our rapid rehousing coordinator. Currently, she is spending only a third of her time, which equates to about 12 and a half hours a week, performing her duties as a rapid rehousing coordinator. We at Shores of Hope feel that this is an inefficient and almost a misuse of the money that we've been allocated to execute the program. We are requesting CDBG funding to cover the last 7/10 of her time and make her a full-time rapid rehousing coordinator. This would allow her to do her job much more fully, and it would allow us to place more currently homeless or potentially homeless families into housing in West Sacramento. It would also allow her to go to Woodland and advocate on behalf of West Sacramento residents to ensure that they get the housing that they deserve. That's really the only question, or that's the only comments I have. I would just ask that you guys continue to consider us as you guys decide how to allocate CDBG funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tovar. Is there anyone else that has put in a request to speak card for this segment of the agenda? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda for the meeting minutes. Go ahead.
I'd move the meeting minutes from our February meeting, but just noting that I did see in the minutes that we were told the CDBG funds would be coming back this month. So it sounds like they're coming back in April instead? May. Okay, thanks for the clarification. I'd move the minutes as drafted.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none there, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of adopting the minutes from the January 24th, 2018 meeting, say yes.
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 Opposed? Okay, hearing none, the meeting minutes are adopted. Moving on to item 3. Let's see, we have, Ms. Richards, are you presenting 3?
Yes, I am. Good evening, Chairperson Brady and members of the commission. My name is Diane Richards. I'm a senior program manager with the Economic Development and Housing Department, and my role with the city is primarily business attraction and recruitment and retention, and so you don't see me a lot. I don't frequently bring policy items to you, but tonight, in fact, we do have our sewer credits program, which is a program that the city administers as a financial incentive to businesses that qualify for them. In 2013, about 5 years ago, the City Council adopted the existing sewer credit guidelines, and they are eligible, businesses that are eligible include restaurants and food serving uses, as well as catalyst uses in City Council focus areas that have been adopted, such as the Bridge District, the Washington District, Pioneer Bluff, the Central Business District, and so on. At this time, we have about 105 sewer credits remaining. The program has about 2 3/4 of years remaining before it will be sunsetted by Sacramento Regional Sanitation District. And so over the past few years, we have, as you see in the report, we've used the credits for a number of restaurants, including the Firehouse Burgers and Brew. We've also used it for Devil May Care and the Barn Restaurant, as well as the Bridgeview Market Cafe, which you may have heard recently. La Crosta will be a new restaurant that will be going in there. So we've made good use of the credits for restaurants which is a need in the city to have more restaurants and to have more venues for people to enjoy and dine. We're proposing now that since we have the credits left and we only have about, like I said, 2 3/4 years left, one of the things that we've noticed over the years is that microbreweries, craft breweries, they have a pretty significant sewer treatment component to them, and they're treated much like restaurants in terms of the impact that they have, and so their fees tend to be as high, some of the highest in the range for commercial uses. And what we found is that a lot of these craft breweries are small businesses having very few employees and having capital costs that are hard to overcome as they open a new business. So what we'd like to ask your consideration of here tonight is to consider craft beverage, craft breweries, wineries, distilleries, and similar type uses to be added to the eligible uses list, such as restaurants and other food serving uses. As you might know, many of the microbreweries have a food component. They have a food truck or they have food serving uses, and so it ends up being a destination and a place for the community to gather. And we found that in some of these older industrial areas, it has really revitalized them, and we'd like to see that activity continue. So we would like to have your comments and thoughts about this. We do have alternatives. We've targeted the global food industry hub as another industry that we've really focused on. Many of those businesses, such as United Bakery, Chondo's Tacos, they have also endured pretty significant sewer treatment fees from Regional San, but they are not currently eligible because they are not part of that target industry group. Now, Regional San does have a couple of other programs that are available to businesses to reduce or finance their fees. But so that's why we feel like for those larger businesses, they can probably use some of those existing programs. So we'd like to target these sewer credits that are remaining to some of the smaller business and kind of keep this craft brewery renaissance kind of going in the city. So those are all my remarks at this time. I would like to ask for your thoughts and comments on that and any direction that you might have for us in moving forward.
Commissioners?
Yes, Ms. Richards, real quick. Does the brewery have to be located in this Port Brewing District?
That's what we're proposing in the guidelines.
Okay.
But an alternative could be to encourage that in other industrial areas of the city. We do have an interest in continuing to market and brand the Port Brewing District since it already has achieved an identity, but that could be an alternative as well that you could recommend or give us comments regarding
Yeah, I
that.
was just thinking about Rubicon. They used to be on Stillwater. That just recently closed last year. So if a business wants to go there and open up, maybe, try to get another attempt, I would like to see maybe them be eligible for the credit.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner White?
Would this be retroactive for the 3 businesses that are already there? Would they get a rebate for what they already spent?
No, Regional Sands program does not allow for the program to be applied retroactively. So if a business has already paid their sewer treatment fee, they are not eligible to use sewer credits. However, if they expand and they have an additional impact, then they would be eligible for an application of additional credits.
Question to dovetail off of the first question you received. Looked at the definition section, and I see that it looks like it was adding craft beverage producers as beneficiaries of the program, and then also adding the Port Craft Brewing District to focus areas that would benefit.
Yes.
So you're saying that it's only craft beverage producers in that district that would benefit, or would it be craft beverage producers in any of the focus areas that could benefit from the fee reduction?
So currently, the current guidelines allow the craft breweries in those districts to be eligible as long as they have a retail food serving use. So they're currently eligible in Bridge District, Washington, Pioneer Bluff, and the CBD.
Okay, but only if they have the food component. So if this then would allow them to be eligible without the food component?
It would. Well, no, actually, yes, it would. You are correct. I guess what I wanted to clarify is that they could be eligible under the catalyst category currently in these other districts that are city council focus areas. So if they so chose, we could bring that to the city council
Right.
for approval.
Well, I just want to voice my support then for this. I think the craft brewery scene that we have emerging in West Sacramento is great. I petted some puppies over the weekend. It was a fun event for the whole community. And absolutely, if there's ways that we can help those small businesses get off the ground, reducing costs of the upfront fees that you get right when you're trying to start up a business, this would definitely be helpful, and I'm fully supportive.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Yes.
Well, there were some comments.
Yep. Yes.
I will defer.
Defer. Okay.
Okay, so I had a
Bell.
question, which was, is there any possibility for an extension on these besides them expiring in 2020? And have you pursued that?
We actually got the program extended. Regional SAN really wanted to end the program some years ago. It has endured far longer than they anticipated. It was actually created when the city's wastewater treatment plant was closed, and we joined up with Regional SAN, and I believe it was 2003 roughly. They thought all the sewer credits would be used up long ago, and it is an administrative challenge for them, and there are a number of other cities that still have substantial amounts of credits. So a few years ago, they gathered all the cities together and the counties, and we signed agreements that say that the credits will sunset, the program will sunset fully December 31st, 2020. I don't think that door will be open again. And I might also add that Regional SAN is in the process of adopting a new program called the Confluence Program, which has a regional competitiveness program in it whereby a business can apply for a reduction of their sewer fee if they create a minimum number of jobs. That program hasn't been adopted yet, but it is in the pilot program right now. As a matter of fact, the city of West Sacramento was able to get United Bakery, their expansion. We were able to get United Bakery approved as the first pilot of that program, so they're getting a 50% reduction in their $85,000 plus sewer fee.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't think the chances of extending the program are realistic, but I will certainly, approach them if that's your.
And then I had another question, which was, So out of the 105 credits that are available, it looks like for Drake's Brewing, you only needed like less than 3. And if there's 105, what is your expectation in the brewery district as far as how many would get used there if it's all approved? Would you anticipate you would have enough businesses to use up all of that?
No, that's a very good point. That is a lot of credits. I would say that potentially 1 or 2 more could go in that particular area. Well, actually, several more could go in that area. It's a pretty large area, as you know, and there's a lot of, right now there isn't a lot of available space due to some other industries that are expanding. But the other point that I would make is that the 105 credits that we have currently can also be used for residential projects in any of those city council focus areas. So for example, if we had a housing development or a mixed-use project, which we do have several that we're working on, they would be eligible to apply for all of those credits, and they could immediately go, all 105 could be gone in a heartbeat.
Right, that was kind of my concern, is that I think that we have some really big priorities, especially with housing and our homeless situation, doing transitional housing, and I certainly wouldn't want to, see all these credits go there, and then we wouldn't have credits to support other areas of need within the city, but I do like the idea, and I agree with that it's a wonderful district, and I love that it's so close to my house, and I would love to see it grow even more, so you definitely have my support.
Thank you.
Mr. Price?
Yeah, so based on that comment, how do you prioritize breweries, housing? Is it first come, first served as far as credits?
It is first come, first serve.
I see, okay.
And they must be eligible to pull a permit in fairly short order. So if we had a brewery that was ready right now and it needed a few credits, I mean, that's the other thing, these smaller breweries, I think one recently was, 4 or 5 credits, but that's $17,000, just for example. So each of them would use a very small amount unless they were really huge. And by definition, these are microbreweries. These are nano breweries. They're the Bike Dogs, the
Right.
Jackrabbits, Eola Brewing, those kinds of things. It is a first come, first served basis. As I said, we do have some projects in city council focus areas that we are working hard to bring, forward, fairly quickly, but development projects by their very nature are complicated and take a long time, and financial feasibility is always a question. So I guess this isn't going to be a magic bullet. We still may end up, having a lot of credits left unless some of these, like I said, some of these mixed-use or residential projects move forward, which we do expect they will. So it might be that we actually have a project that uses all of them, and we would need to go to the city council for one of those projects anyway, if that would use 100 credits. So it may be that they'll be gone, but it just seems like there's an opportunity here to help attract and incentivize some of this activity that we've enjoyed in that area.
So in that regard, attracting breweries, how do you go about that? Do you market that you have sewer credits to?
It's more of capturing opportunities as we learn about them. I mean, part of our job is to know who is out there looking and who is actively seeking a location, and then use this as a tool. For example, we've gotten a lot of publicity and a lot of good marketing benefit from the 3 that have opened, and we've had a lot of others, not maybe a lot is too strong a word, but we've had others come to us and say, hey, we heard that West Sacramento has this program for breweries, and then, we've kind of had to say, well, yes, we give great business assistance, and we'll help expedite your permits and, do all these wonderful things for you, help you understand the process, but we haven't really had a financial tool to use, and so it seems like this is a good opportunity to do that. Having said that, I do appreciate the comment about, do we want to make this open to that type of business throughout the city? And that's something that we will take under advisement, and we will need to consult with our community development partners in terms of, does that make sense? Does that have any other unintended impacts? that we should consider. But we are seeking your comments as we continue to refine the guidelines and eventually bring them to the city council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Matt?
So my questions followed on, I think, the others here. I think it would be disappointing to lose the credits if there was a way to expend them before the termination date or the sunset date of the program. That would be great. So I would encourage you to expand eligible businesses as broadly as possible. Saying that, I fully support the proposal tonight. And the last comment I would just bring, I can understand why regional sanitation would neither want to extend it or make it more complicated, but it seems, since it is a regional service, that there should be a marketplace for these credits. Has there been any discussion to do something like the state's cap and trade program, where you might trade credits between communities so as to use them all for the benefit of the region's economic growth?
There's a few exceptions, but in the past, some jurisdictions have been able to assign credits to other jurisdictions. I believe that when we did the agreement a few years back, that provision was eliminated, but I am not certain. The only jurisdictions that have enough credits left to even consider that are the city of Sacramento, Sacramento County. Yeah, I think those are the two. The other cities have really done well in using them, even us. We had over 600 at one time, and we're down to 100. And so I don't think, I'd need to get back to you on whether that is still an allowable program guideline. I don't know that anyone can assign them. I know we were approached recently by the former Campbell Soup Plant, which is now a business park. They have thousands of these things, and they were actually looking to sell them to other businesses that didn't have them. But at some point, it becomes kind of a, you have to do kind of the value, the net present value on that. Is it really worth it to pay what for those sewer credits? But that's an interesting question. I guess the other policy question really before you and ultimately the city council is these other mixed-use projects in these other catalyst areas, which the city has invested considerable time and energy and capital in activating the Bridge District, the Washington District, Pioneer Bluff, and the CBD. And so, that's kind of what we're bumping up against. Maybe there will not be support for expanding the uses and expanding into this district. But I think it's kind of a little minor tweak in my mind of the guidelines. And we still have eligibility for the mixed-use projects and the housing projects that we know that, are working their way through the process in other city council focus areas.
Well, knowing the challenges economic development faces in the post-redevelopment era, this is a tool. It would make sense to take advantage of it as much as possible. So I fully encourage an opportunity to expend all of them as the program allows. So thank you.
Okay,
Thank
Commissioner
you.
White?
One really quick question. So if a business that had a snack bar, like say a new theater wanted to come into town, could they get these credits as well?
If they were in a city council focus area, they could,
Okay. Thank you.
like the CBD, yeah.
Just a little aside too, to say, we just love having guests here, but our feelings aren't hurt if guests leave when their part's over.
You're not tagged till the end. Thanks, Commissioners. I echo a lot that was brought up and supported in this as well. Let me understand, Ms. Richards, right now, there are certain zone areas that allow the credits, and we're expanding those into an industrial area, a different zoning for this social wave of mercantile that's coming through. We, are there other areas that need to be looked at as well, as far as extending, I mean, other reasons to extend, other uses and other zoning categories?
That sounds like a two-part question, and the first one is, are there other areas? And I think it has been commented on that perhaps other industrial areas, breweries should be considered eligible for credits if they're in other areas of the city, and that's certainly a recommendation that this commission could make to the to change the guidelines in that manner. As far as other areas, again, I think that statement earlier, or that comment earlier, would really go to both of those items. You know, allowing them in other industrial areas is another part of the city. Currently, we don't have any other city council adopted focus areas that have been actually implemented and adopted in that manner. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Are there any uses that can be categorized as well, expanded use-wise? I mean, we've got
Do you have
kind
any?
of two areas. We've got
Do you have
uses.
any suggestions or particular types of businesses that you think the city should target and use these incentives for?
Well, we've got our social area called the Barn over there, and they're going to need some credits, I would think, based on their expansion.
They've already received credits both for the construction of the restaurants and bars, as well as Drake's Brewing has received credits. And the Barn is in the Bridge District, so it is automatically eligible. Any businesses that locate there are technically eligible for sewer credits by virtue of their location.
Okay, all right, good, thank you. That kind of uses and activity in the city is what I was thinking of. So one area that the commission sounds like might want to be offering as a suggestion, recommendation to the council is for breweries to be considered in other industrial areas in the city. Correct?
And the commission could include that in their recommendation, and that would be brought forward to the city council for their consideration.
Okay. Do we need to take a vote on that?
Yes,
Oh, we do?
we would like you
Good.
to. For the recommendation? I would defer to my clerk here. Do we take a vote for a recommendation? I think generally we do. We're asking you for
Okay.
action.
Does one of my commissioners have a?
I have just one
recommendation?
more question, I
Oh,
apologize.
yes.
I'm just reading the language again. I noticed that the definition of craft brewery includes at the end with associated retail food serving uses. Is there a reason that, I think I lost my thought. Is there a reason that that's included, rather than just a straight brewery that didn't serve food? What's the intention of adding that last little additional segment that says with retail food serving uses? Why not just put the period after including a tap or tasting room?
Because then it wouldn't have that component of gathering and mixing, and two reasons, really. One is that was a city council direction in the past, was that there needed to be a food serving use in terms of, we were trying to attract more restaurants. We have a need for more restaurants and more food serving uses, so that was one reason, was to continue in that vein that the city council had directed us to do. And then also because otherwise it's just a place for brewing, which is an industrial use and not as much of a retail use, a retail.
I think I follow. Yeah, if they had a tap or tasting room, it would be more than just a brewery, but it would not be open to anyone under the age of 21. So by having the food service, I think it becomes a family-friendly establishment. Is that the intent?
That's the kind of activity that we wanted to encourage, that similar to what we already have seen in the city.
Okay. Commissioner Price?
And it seems to me if it has a food service element, the impact on the sewage treatment plant is greater than if it's just a brewery in and of itself. And I'm throwing that out there.
Disposable,
Potentially, except that many of them use food trucks, and the food trucks
all disposable.
are, yeah, they're fully contained units.
But that does qualify as including a retail food serving component, as having a
Yes, it
food
does.
truck?
Yes, it
Okay.
does.
Yeah, you don't have a full commercial kitchen or scullery or anything associated with really impacting a sewer sanitary district services.
Yes, and restaurant costs are so substantial that that was another way that the tap rooms could meet that definition and, you know, provide a greater benefit to the community in terms of having the food trucks. It's kind of fun, it's kind of cool, and you get different food each time, and so we think that, you know, is a benefit.
Okay, anyone else? Mark? No? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
So, sure, I'll do that motion. I motion that we recommend that the sewer credit be applied to breweries outside of the proposed Port Craft Brewing District.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion?
Yes, to be the little dark rain cloud on this. This Port Craft Brewing District is really large. It encompasses a lot of that area of the industrial. And from an economic development perspective, to offer this credit in this area to try to build this area up as a destination, rather than let it spread throughout that industrial area, I think it's a really wise move. So I have to say, from an economic development perspective, I think it's great to focus it on this one area. It doesn't mean that people can't open a brewery where they'd like to.
Correct. It just means that they won't get that credit.
Right.
Which is, we have 105 of those, and if somebody decides to open one, let's say like the one in Rubicon again, then they wouldn't be eligible for that credit. That's my only concern.
Well, they would in the Rubicon because they're in a CDBG area.
They would or would not?
They would.
No,
Yes?
what I meant by CBD is the Central Business District, which is the West Capitol Avenue area primarily. So Rubicon would not, that area would not be eligible currently. And our recommendation to you is that we do this to further enhance and build the Port Brewery District. We do have a very large industrial area. So if you do want to recommend that they open it up to all the industrial areas, that would include Southport Business Park, that would include, and the chances of us, I think, having that kind of use there are probably still less significant in terms of, that's just not a place where people gather. It is more industrial in nature, but some of these older industrial areas, they have a smaller feel, they're multi-tenant buildings, they're smaller spaces. Breweries tend to look for smaller spaces. So even though we might make Southport Business Park and Riverside Commerce Center eligible, they don't have a lot of these older, smaller spaces that the Port Brewing District does have, so.
I would expect, regardless of where the credits were available, that the city's permit process would dictate where these would be cited.
Yes, the zoning
So,
ultimately is.
I'm not
is a
expecting
determinant.
it would be at the corner of Fifth and I, for example, unless that was an approved use of that site.
Yeah, I think technically they are allowed in all the industrial areas. Then there's some limitations in the definitions on in the zoning code about the size of the brewery and how many barrels and so on and so forth.
So just to clarify, however, through this program, we're making it possible for people to seek fee credits. They're not necessarily guaranteed to be given those fee credits, right?
Right.
So the city has the ability to tell anybody that comes in and says, I would love to get this sewer fee credit, sorry, but we're really not focusing on your location or some other reason why you don't think it's appropriate to grant it to them?
Well, the guidelines do dictate where they are eligible, so it is, if we make all the industrial areas eligible, then we would be hard-pressed to turn them down. That would create a problem for the city, so.
So Chris, was your comment a substitute motion?
No, it was just discussion. I think the plan as written and presented is really thought out in terms of economic development and how we want to help the city grow. And so
I think we have a vote.
it is discussion about that motion.
Okay. The motion, or do you want to continue with the?
Well, I motioned, there was second, I think
Yep.
now it's up for
Great.
vote.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, let's take a vote. Do you want to do a roll call, please?
Can you repeat the motion?
Yes, so my motion is to recommend that the sewer credit be applied to breweries outside of the proposed Port Craft Brewing District.
Okay.
Did we have a
Could,
second on
could,
that?
could I ask to amend that and just have it be outside, but within a industrial zoned area? Not sure what the appropriate language would be, but I would want to be clear without having to create an incentive that contradicts either the economic development goals of the community or its zoning and use plan. So if we're consonant with that, maybe the language that says consonant with the city's economic development and planned uses, but without
Well,
nitpicking here.
Yeah, they
In
wouldn't
other
be-
words, I'm not suggesting that these be approved credits in a residential community, for example.
Right, they
Correct.
wouldn't be allowed uses in
Right, right.
those zones, so
Right.
that,
So we have,
the city's zoning already takes care of that.
Right.
we have a motion and a second discussion. So let's move ahead
Right,
with roll
that's
call
it.
and see where this goes.
All right, Commissioner Brady?
No.
Or, no? Commissioner Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Altamirano?
Yes?
Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
No.
Commissioner Kiesling?
Yes.
Thank you. We have a recommendation that has passed.
Thank you.
So going on to next item on the agenda is presentations, item 4. And I think Ms. Richards, you're presenting that as well?
We have our new Administrative Services Director, Roberta Raper, here to join us tonight on the Book of Fees item. Welcome, Roberta.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. I am here to briefly present the item on the Book of Fees. We have taken this item, this is a normal annual update that we do. We've taken this item to all of the various commissions and also the West Sacramento Chamber of Commerce and the Environmental and Utilities Commission to receive feedback and comments that we've incorporated into our presentation to be heard by the council on April 11th. And so we're here before you tonight to do the same thing. We're requesting your feedback and comments on the proposed fee schedule. Just to do a brief presentation, you both received a redlined version of the Book of Fees and a summary on what the changes are. And my understanding is you've also received a printout, a comparison of some of our planning commission fees with other agencies within the region. So I'm happy to go through some of the changes. We've also got department representatives here to discuss or answer any questions you have. But for your information, this is really just a minor update to update some of our fees to more accurately reflect the cost of providing service. We are prohibited by charging any more than our cost of service, and so this really is aligning the fees with the costs that we incur to provide various services. Some of the more significant increases really are to our deposits that we request for certain planning commission items. So those items are charged at actual cost, but we're increasing the amount of the deposit because we find that one, they haven't been updated in a while. Two, we're very, very low currently compared to surrounding areas, and our cost of providing the services is higher than what we are charging for deposits, and we end up having to request additional money. Some of the other changes throughout the item are really clarifications to verbiage. The first being in October 2017, we adopted a new fee that was a transaction fee on credit card payments, and so we're actually changing the language to, instead of transaction fee, to convenience fee. And then some of the other public works and engineering items, we've just added some clarifying language. They're not changing how we charge the fees, how we levy the fees, or the process for doing any of the work. It's just really clarification items. So if you've got any comments or questions or feedback, I'd be happy to take that, and we'd incorporate that into our presentation to City Council on April 11th.
Commissioners?
Can I beat you? Can I be the first?
Yes, you can be first.
You probably hear it often, convenience fee. When I pay for my monthly membership fee at the rec center, they do not charge me a convenience fee. Is there a dollar amount that this applies to? Or is it across the board services and charges?
It is across the board, however, it does not apply to using credit cards to pay your utility bills, your water bills. And what we found is a lot of folks will come in and want to pay very high dollar items, transient occupancy tax, other permits, thousands of dollars. And so the city is charged a fee based on the value of the transaction. And so we, by doing this, are both wanting to recuperate some of the costs that we incur for taking those, that reduces our revenue that we can use for services within the city. And then also provide an incentive for perhaps folks that want to use their credit card to earn points and spend it for high dollar items that they might think twice.
Well, if I'm a contractor, I'm paying for everything with my United or American Airlines credit card, believe me. But you didn't answer my question. I'm just interested, is there a dollar amount? Because I don't see a transaction fee when I'm paying with a credit card at the rec center. And if there's not, I would certainly like to see that we consider that. I understand city's nonprofit and doesn't want to exactly lose revenues to transact financial, financial transactions, but to the degree that it's so minor.
I will say that I actually can't answer your question, and perhaps Cindy can.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi. Hi, good evening. Cindy Tuttle, Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of West Sacramento. At the Recreation Center, we've been budgeting those convenience fees or transaction fees in our annual budget, and so we'd already been absorbing the cost of that. We were very concerned about charging this because, as you know, the Recreation Center provides a service to some of the lower income families in our community, and there was a huge concern. Even though it may not be much for some folks it could be the difference between them being able to have their children come there and participate, or families be able to participate. So the Parks and Recreation Department consciously decided to continue to budget that amount and not charge a transaction fee on credit cards for that specific reason. Because
So
we've
I
already
want to
been doing it.
congratulate you. I think the optics of it are what concern me more than anything, where you may see a minor transaction fee. And I remember when DMV used to charge me for registration renewals, and the first year they did it, online credit cards, they charged a convenience fee. And it went away shortly thereafter because of the objections, I think, raised by the people of the state of California. But I think that's a brilliant strategy. I'd want to encourage that, not across the board, but with programs that are low cost but high visibility. The optics are important with regard to these add-on costs.
Other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Price?
Has there been a cost of service study done on these fees?
Typically, what has happened historically is that departments will do their own calculations and cost of service study for the fees that they are responsible for, and they are reviewed by the finance department to make sure that that the calculations are done, that the inputs are all correct, and then we basically facilitate bringing this item to the various commissions and taking it to council. That is going to change because I am I'm fairly new. You've never seen me before. There's a reason for that, but and I believe that we should more than facilitate, but really lead this effort and do a full cost of service study. And so when we go to update fees again next year, the process will be a little bit different. So yes, to the extent that that it is required that we do a study to make sure that we're not exceeding the cost of providing the service. We have done that. It hasn't been a full-blown, we haven't contracted with somebody to do it. The individual departments have done that themselves. We have reviewed those, and then they end up on this book of fee schedule.
I would make the suggestion that a cost of service study be conducted. I've personally found, and I worked for one of these municipalities, and when indirect overhead costs were included in the fee schedule, the fee was increased substantially when those costs were distributed through each one of the departments. I mean, when you go across this thing, it's why is Rockland more expensive? And I'm going to say they included their indirect overhead costs.
And we have as well, as far as I understand, we use sort of our fully burdened rates, and we apply some of those because those are part of the cost of service. But like I said, the individual departments have been calculating their own. We review them, and so we will be doing a more centralized process going forward to make sure that we are including all costs and being consistent. Yes.
That would be my suggestion. I'm all about paying or the fees reflecting the actual cost.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Altamirano?
Could I just
Yes, please, Mark.
follow on quickly? Working in this area, I know Prop 13, Prop 26, and a great deal of legal work has been done in the area of fees, and it's probably the one bit of the financial management of public agencies that I have some confidence in believing they've done their homework on. They are subject to adverse actions, both legal and the loss of those fees for failing to actually do a clear cost analysis and charge for the cost of services. So, just to support you, but if it results in more money for the city, all for it.
Commissioner Altamirano?
Yes, thank you. I realize that credit card fees can be very expensive. Out of curiosity, why are we not charging like a transaction fee or convenience fee, excuse me, for utility payments?
I think for the exact reason that Mr. Campbell spoke of earlier, those are, there are a couple of reasons. One, they're low dollar amount. Two, we'd like to incentivize people actually paying by credit card. It reduces, walk-ins at the front counter and having to process those in a different way that could be more costly to the city. And so, and very high profile, that would be something that would, I'm sure, get a lot of backlash. So that's the reason we've excluded those. And I will note as well that we're also excluding the recreation fees for the same reason.
Okay, thank you.
This side, Commissioner Bell?
So I noticed that you had crossed out not shall exceed, but shall be 3%, again, talking about the convenience fees. And I was wondering, why did that change and to a shall be just 3% versus whatever the actual cost is?
Well, that's a very good question. This was, much of this was done prior to my arrival at the city, so I don't know the reason for that, except that my guess would be that we said not to exceed, but we planned on charging 3% because that's the amount that we are charged by our merchant provider, and so we are passing through the exact amount of that fee. So,
That would make sense. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to say is that I think that our pricing, and thank you for the comparison, because I was doing some comparison before this meeting too, and it's kind of hard to dig up all this data, so I'm grateful for this. I was just wondering if maybe you could speak on why in some cases we seem like, for instance, Elk Grove has $1,000 for their development agreement amendment, and we're charging $5,000, and the same thing with the general plan or zoning amendment, where Elk Grove is $1,000 and we're $5,000. I'm just kind of curious what causes that difference between our city and the city of Elk Grove.
I'm going to defer to the Community Development Director, Charlene
Okay.
Hamilton, for that one.
Good evening, Commissioner. Charlene Hamilton with Community Development. Really, I don't have an explanation for that. They too are on deposit systems, so they, I guess, have chosen just to collect a lower deposit. But those items tend to be very big ticket items, and I don't know. I just don't know why they're keeping their deposits so low on those items. What will happen then is probably in the very next month, that deposit gets used up, so then they're starting to go into the billing system. The reason why we're raising our deposits quite a bit is because, number one, they haven't been looked at in 5 years. Number two, we've been having to spend a lot of time trying to collect on the invoices leading up to Planning Commission. Sometimes it's even caused projects to be delayed because they have such an outstanding balance. And we have found that once they receive their approval at the Planning Commission, if they have an outstanding balance, it's very difficult for us to collect on it, especially if it's a project that they then turn around and sell, that they don't plan to build. And so we've ended up with some debt we've had to write off. The highest one being during the economic downturn, we had one project that went under, and we had to write off $55,000 from the Planning Commission action. But, so the way we derive these, we went back and looked at, say, several use permits that had been processed in the last few years, and tried to get an idea of what they typically were actually costing. So ones that had been completely through the process, we tried to use comparable ones of different degrees, and we did that pretty much on all the different types of planning applications, from tentative maps to development agreements, which we've been doing a lot of with the cannabis businesses. So we kind of looked at what they cost and then said, okay, what's a reasonable deposit to request that kind of signals what we think it's going to cost, so that it's transparent also for our applicants, so they have a better idea and they're not caught off guard after they're halfway through the process and suddenly it's averaging, around $8,000. So that's kind of, and then we take these cities, these are set cities that we have to use to compare on all fees. So all the departments had to do this for their fees. And I just realized on the Planning Commission one that it was left out of the agenda report. That's why you got it tonight. But we check in on these two just to see how we're comparing. And we try to look at some, the exact question that you raise, Commissioner Bell, is why are they different? And can we find an explanation? Is their process different? Or is our process, do we need to look at our process and maybe make some changes? So this is a helpful guide for us too. And I will note that in the red lines contained in your agenda report on Planning Commission fees, 2 of the asterisks fell off. And so all of them are intended to be deposits, with the exception of the couple minor ones. So the asterisks that fell off that need to get added back in are under Land Division C1 parcel map. That should be a $4,000 deposit, so it should have an asterisk. And then the same E under permits, 1B, use permit with an EIR. We were definitely not going to do that on a flat fee. So that's going to have a deposit, and that's a deposit of $8,000. And then again, if the project goes quicker, doesn't require as much review, then they would get any monies that weren't used returned, refunded to them after the action was complete. So I know I went a little bit beyond that, but I wanted the opportunity to explain how
I
we approach
appreciate all the
these.
information. Thank you very much for that explanation.
Yes.
So you mentioned at the outset that you visited the West Sacramento Chamber and brought them the proposed fee increases. Were there any concerns expressed, or have we received any letters, anyone expressing any sort of reservation about what's being proposed?
No, when we attended that meeting, and it was actually on March 13th, we had provided this full report in advance of that meeting, but evidently it was not emailed out to the attendees of that meeting until after the meeting. So we did provide contact information at the city for anybody who reviewed it. We did give a presentation and received, provided contact information for people to email or call if they had any questions, concerns, or comments that they wanted included in our final report, and we have not received any comments.
I'm looking at my watch, they've now had it for 2 weeks, and you've not received any concerns?
So
Okay.
as the person who goes to that meeting too, this was not the first time we've seen this. And I think a few years ago, we had a really big update to the Book of Fees, and that one went through with the chamber members in this commission quite extensively for a long period of time. This one's a pretty small update. And the developers who participated in that meeting all really recognize that West Sacramento continues to be more affordable than many other cities, and appreciates the amount, how easy it is to work with the staff and to get their projects through as well.
Thank you. I thought you looked familiar.
Yeah, that-
I'll just echo that. I appreciate the handout, the spreadsheet we received tonight just to show that, but looking at the comparison between West Sacramento and the surrounding jurisdictions, I mean, it's quite clear that even though many of these are deposits, it is definitely a place that is on the lower end on the fees pretty much across the board, which I think makes it less of a barrier to entry and makes us an attractive place to do business. So I'm supportive.
My brother-in-law, who does construction, is paying $65,000 fees in San Jose. So, yes.
These initial fees that are here aren't reflective of the true cost of those documents. So $1,000 for
Correct.
that EIR is a little bit under.
Correct. Okay, other commissioners? Okay. I support Commissioner White's comments as well, and I was there for that presentation, and I do recall the time when the water fees were presented, and that was a huge increase for the meter fees. And I'm glad to see that we are keeping the recreation fees the same, use of the recreation center. That's a huge incentive, and it's highly used. So I think your heart's in the right place. And are there any other recommendations from the commission? Okay, do you have good information?
Thank you.
going
Yes, I
forward?
do. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next item here, which is the general administration function, requests and comments from the commissioners. Any? None? Okay. Staff updates.
Well, I do not have any other staff updates. So I guess that concludes that portion.
Okay, thank you. Do we have the next meeting or calendar update? Next meeting dated?
May 30th, and the next city council meeting, April 11th.
Okay.
And the date for the state of the city is
May 2nd.
May 2nd? May 3rd. Okay. And Polly, do you by any chance, what's our deadline for RSVPing to that?
March 30th.
It's pretty close.
And it
How
and
many-
it does
how many-
sell out.
Up your mind.
Yeah, 2 days.
How many commissioners have not responded, Polly? Do you know? And on this commission?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Who needs to respond still?
I know, right?
Okay, I think we know who. Okay, very good, moving forward. Well, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will move.
Second?
Commissioner Campbell has moved, and we have Commissioner Kiesling with the second. Any discussion? Those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.